Reform UK leader and newly elected MP for Clacton, Nigel Farage, is in his constituency today as he begins his role as their Member of Parliament.
His party received over 4 million votes in the general election, although returned just 5 members of Parliament. So let's cross right now to Clacton and speak with our GB News reporter Charlie Peters, who is with Nigel Farage.
Well, I'm joined now by Nigel Farage on his first day of campaigning in his new constituency. Mr. Farage, what has been the key issues you've heard on the doorstep here in Clacton while campaigning?
Local issues, policing, crime. Why did the police not use stop and search? There was a stabbing, someone killed just a couple of weeks ago. Open use of drugs in the streets. I'm not even talking just cannabis. Crack pipes being smoked during the middle of the day. Why did the police not do more? Interestingly, antisocial behaviour has fallen because people are scared to go out at night. So issues around that really, really big. The other big one in the more deprived parts of the constituency, people saying things like, I want to work, but I can't. Because if I work more than 16 hours a week, I lose all my benefits. So that's another one. You get a sense, we're here on the edge of Jaywick, which is one of the poorer communities in the country. And you get a sense that the benefit system is actually trapping these people rather than being a safety net. They don't feel they have the means to get out. So things like that, very, very big. On the national issues, it's all basically immigration and housing. A lack of social housing stock, but for young people, even out here where prices are cheaper than London, how do we ever get on the housing ladder? So issues around that.
Well, issues around that, of course, you term this as the immigration election. GB News revealed in the last hour that the first set of migrant boats have arrived under the new Labour government. Do you have confidence in this new Border Security Command?
Look, Border Security Command is just a name. Have a think about what's been done over the last 4 years. The Royal Navy are going to be in the Channel. The RAF will be patrolling the Channel. We've heard this again and again and again. Do you not think that all of our intelligence services hadn't been working very hard on this for the last 4 years? Of course they have. None of this works unless you deport people who come illegally. Interestingly, the last Labour governments did deport a lot of people, tens of thousands a year in some years. Since then, the European Court of Human Rights has become more activist, more engaged, more involved in a broader area of our lives. I don't think, all the while we're involved with that, all the while we observe the principles of a 1951 convention that applies to the United Nations that is now hopelessly out of date and was designed for a post-war world, all the while those international agreements sit above British law, I don't think we'll solve any of this. And there's some evidence that the trafficking gangs have been telling people over the last month, just wait until Labour win, and then you're guaranteed that to stay, you're guaranteed you won't go to Rwanda. So if we get some calm weather over the next few weeks, the numbers coming will be enormous.
And you've obviously been very critical of the Tory effort on maintaining the borders. I expect we'll hear more of the same dealing with Labour's approach. You've described your own party's arrival into Parliament as a sort of a bridgehead. Just the 5 MPs with 14% of the vote. Is that a disappointing feeling?
Breakthroughs are never disappointing. Breakthroughs are always good. The first past the post system is absolutely brutal. We could have got over 4 million votes and no seats under this system. If we had PR, we'd be nearly 100 seats. I think the appetite for electoral change is going to come. Just think about this. For every one Reform MP, there are 800,000 votes behind them. For every Labour MP, fewer than 30,000. So you have first past the post can stop parties with big vote shares getting a small number of seats, but equally, it can give the Labour Party, with a third of the vote, 2/3 of the seats. So I think the argument for electoral reform is going to become very strong.
But the biggest proponent of that argument is the Liberal Democrats, with 72 MPs off around 12% of the vote. Have they been in touch with you since the general election last week to say that they'd like to campaign with you to push forward electoral reform?
No, they haven't, but I'm perfectly happy to work with them on it. It's been something they've campaigned for decades. Sadly, when Nick Clegg had the chance, over a decade ago, we had a referendum on a system that wasn't proportional, was preferential, and couldn't be explained in a sentence. Quite how Nick Clegg sold the pass on this, I will never, ever know. There is a clear majority of the British public now think the system doesn't work. These results prove the system doesn't work, and actually the low turnout shows you that just so many people can't see the point of taking part in these elections.
Now, during the campaign, you said that the Tory brand was dead. But in the eyes of many commentators, they've actually exceeded expectations by avoiding that sort of existential wipeout. Are some of their MPs flirting with joining Reform now? Suella Braverman making some comments over the weekend. Would you let her into Reform?
Look, I mean, here's the point. They're already in civil war. I mean, you know, the election result, the ink is barely dry on the paper. And they're at war. You know, you have people like Suella Braverman, people like the father of the house, Sir Edward Lee, who say, oh, we must welcome Nigel into the Conservative Party. And then you have the other wing, which is David Cameron, William Hague, and a big majority of the 121 MPs who would want nothing to do with me, with Reform. Yeah, I'm being used at the minute as part of the argument in the middle, but the truth is, it's a broad church, the Conservative Party, with no shared religion of any kind at all. They will go into I suspect, lengthy period of internecine warfare. They are not an effective political force. Can 5 MPs in the House of Commons make a difference? Well, in the Commons itself, we can make arguments, but it's in the country. It's in the country where I'm going to be campaigning, you know, right up to the local elections next year and on to, you know, Welsh Parliament elections, etc., in the years to come. And I think we have a major opportunity to build a mass movement, grassroots organisation, and that's where the opposition will come.
During your campaign, you faced several physical attacks, some in this town, in fact.
Yeah.
Now, on election night, we saw some Labour MPs facing intimidation from independent candidates. What do you make of that, and what have you thought about the discourse that's followed, with some people saying this is about toxic masculinity? Does that sound about right to you?
So a year ago on GB News, I started saying over and over that we're headed for sectarian voting in British politics. And as with everything I do, everyone says, what a load of nonsense. I had guests on the Farage show saying you're talking complete rubbish. Well, we saw a specimen of this in the local elections earlier this year. And yeah, we have 5 MPs elected to the House of Commons on a blatant anti-Israel ticket and all that implies. And Jess Phillips just about scraped back into her West Midlands seat. She was barracked pretty horribly at the count. And she goes on LBC and says, oh, no. It's just because they were men. I mean, even when it's staring you in the face, they can't recognise the truth of what they've created. Don't forget, Labour opened the door, the Conservatives accelerated it. I mean, 250,000 people came last year from the Indian subcontinent. Now look, the vast majority are going to be great people. The vast majority will integrate. The vast majority will prop up local cricket clubs. The vast majority, a lot of them will become doctors and do terribly well. But there will be a significant number of that 250,000 that not only don't integrate with our way of life and our culture, but actually seek to overturn it. And that's what's going on.
Nigel Farage, on your first day campaigning in your new seat, thank you for coming live on GB News.